After fitting a 2D front suspension sensor to my BMW, I got the chance to record some footage whilst escorting some riders around Andalusia on their sighting laps. But essentially what you see here is what's going on with the bike. I'll go through them very briefly. The green line at the bottom here is my throttle position. That means what the hand is doing on the twist grip. This yellow line is GPS speed, so as it's climbing you're accelerating and as it's descending you're losing speed. This red line along here is brake pressure. Obviously while it's not being used it's a straight line, then you can see brake pressure, and I have the brake pressure coming down showing deceleration. This blue line here is a lean sensor, so this is when I'm going around a corner, that's going around a corner, and when it comes back to this dotted line here, that's when the bike's in its vertical position. And then the aim of doing this was to show front suspension and rear suspension. Now front suspension is the purple line. As the line goes up, that means that the suspension is getting towards top out. That means it rises the front suspension. And as the suspension goes down, you're getting compression in the suspension. And the rear is exactly the same. The rear is this yellow line here. And as that line comes higher, that means the suspension is rising. And as it goes down, it's being compressed. So you can get the gist of what's going on there. Down at the bottom of the screen here is a circuit layout, and we're going to be coming down the back straight here, and it's so simply want to show you what the lines mean, and when we're going round the corner what also happens. What we need to do is come onto the screen and put this box up here, and this actually gives us the measurement values. That means what each of these lines is actually doing. So what I've got at the moment, I've clicked on speed here, so the cursor is following the speed trace, and as you can see the speed is increasing, 124, and it gets up to just about 154 kilometers an hour, and then starting to brake. But the idea was to show front suspension. Now this is obviously a fairly steady away lap, and you can see going down the back straight, if you look at the bottom right hand corner you can see the circuit map, and you can see the little red dot moving. So as we're going down back straight, and you can see the front and rear suspension are more or less mirroring each other. Because we're only at, if you look at the grip position, we're just basically cruising down the back straight. So this is in a very calm state. The front suspension is being lifted because the bike's essentially under acceleration, and the rear suspension is not under too much duress. So the bike is in a very sort of calm, placid motion coming down here. And what you think is a smooth surface, the suspension is jiggling about, but you can see the front and rear are mirroring each other quite accurately. Now, as the green line here at the bottom, the grip position, we're at 50%, and then all of a sudden we're coming into the braking zone, so the throttle goes to 0. The brake pressure is very mild. It's a very soft brake to start off with, and as a maximum I only get to 4 bars, so it's a really steady brake. Interestingly, what you can see is the very second you shut the throttle, the front suspension jumps down. Because you've closed the throttle, you've gone into like an engine braking mode. That transfers weight onto the front wheel. So straight away you can see how much the suspension travel, and if we click on the front suspension displacement, roughly speaking we're at 3.6 millimeters. Now the throttle is still open at that point, and it's probably gone over a bump, so more accurately is probably somewhere about here. So at about 7 millimeters, 7.5 millimeters of stroke. But the bike is, because it's got throttle on, it's like light at the front, as it were. It goes from like 7 or 8 millimeters, and straight away, just by closing the throttle, jumps up to 21 millimeters. So you can see the amount of weight transfers happened. And as the brake pressure increases, as we're going in towards the corner, you can see the front suspension gradually starts to kind of collapse under the weight of the bike being pushed forward because of the increased braking pressure. Interestingly, what you can also see is the rear suspension travel actually starts to become lighter. It's actually, because the weight's gone onto the front wheel, it comes from the back wheel. So you can see the rear suspension actually is rising where the front suspension is falling. You can see the deceleration here. The yellow line is showing the deceleration of speed. And generally speaking, where that line starts to bottom out in the dip here, that roughly equates to most corners in most situations as more or less the apex, the slow point of the corner. I will have finished braking by that point, but this blue line here shows the angle of lean. Now if we click on that, we're at more or less 0 as we start to sort of go into the corner, I'm trailing the brake off, that's the red line here, and the angle of lean steadily goes up and it reaches a maximum of 42 degrees because I'm not going super fast around the corner. But even though I've finished braking at the sort of the apex of the corner, and I haven't actually at this point picked up the throttle is still at 0, but you can see how much, just because I'm going around the corner, how much compression you get with the rear suspension travel, because as the bike's going round the corner, the bike gets pushed into the ground. It's kind of a combination of centrifugal force pushing the bike out, but it can't go out, it pushes the suspension down. So basically the rear suspension goes under load. And you can see the front suspension here, the brake has pulled it down to that much. If you hadn't got the brake pressure sensor on here, it would be difficult to know, what's holding this line down. So bringing in the brake pressure gives you a better idea of where the release is. But even though I've eased the brake off to a 0 here, it's being held down simply by the bike being pushed into the ground. And then as I pick the throttle up, you can see the front suspension starts to unload, and as I gradually accelerate out of the corner, it's only 50% throttle, so it's not a big hard drive, but you can see how the front suspension starts to unload and the rear suspension is held down because of a little bit of squat. These are the sort of things that you can start to look at, even though this is just a steady lap to give you an idea of what you can see with the suspension travel. I'll be doing some more riding with this front suspension sensor on in a more aggressive fashion. I hope it makes sense, hope it helps, and I hope you've enjoyed it.